I'm Deb Estrom, for those of you who don't know me. And I go to Uganda every year. I think this was my 6th trip that I just came back from. And I'll say as well that if any of you are interested in learning more, I'm more than happy to talk afterwards. And if you want to come on the trip, let me know. So just a few thoughts that I have on my trip this year. Months ago, when you as a church prayed for the team before our trip to Uganda, Pastor Pete had asked me how he could specifically pray. I shared with him that I really hadn't had the time to prepare as I typically would, and that I felt a bit disorganized and a bit out of sorts. And though I don't recall the exact words he prayed, I know that he prayed that I would be able to lean into God and that the trip would come together in the way that God had planned. And while we accomplished a lot on this trip, we always do, God had something much bigger. Yes, we provided medical care for around 200 individuals, mostly children. We fed and ministered to street children. We taught nurses and midwives life-saving techniques with some big aha moments, and we left them with some much-needed equipment. We educated leaders on matters of health and education for children and families. All of those things were good. But I really don't think that was why God sent me to Uganda this year. He sent me there to experience vulnerability in a way that I never had before. When I arrived, God allowed me to be stripped of all of my worldly possessions. My bag with my personal belongings, my money, my passport, credit cards, and ID. All of it was stolen. It was a series of unusual events that had led to it. I don't travel with all my money in one bag. I've traveled a lot and I know better than that. I keep my documents on my body. But for some reason, this time was different and I had lost it all. I was completely dependent on God and my friends to provide for me. I didn't really understand at the time just how important that was for me to really experience that vulnerability. I may never fully develop an understanding in this lifetime. Since that trip, more things have happened in my life that have led me to look more at this concept of vulnerability. I've discovered that it's actually a pretty well-researched topic. So I'll go ahead and state now that many of these next thoughts are not original thoughts from myself, but actually the work of Brené Brown, a shame researcher, author, and storyteller. In her works, Brown identifies vulnerability as the birthplace of shame, fear, and anxiety. As I sat alone that first night in Uganda, I wrestled with all 3 of these emotions. In our culture, we tend to see our vulnerabilities as weaknesses. I felt that weakness, and I was truly broken. I took comfort in James 1, 2-4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. I knew God was working on me. I wasn't happy in that moment, but could I find joy? The most masterful part of God's plan was this. He let me experience that very vulnerable moment in a culture where vulnerabilities are not looked at that which makes you weak, rather that which makes you unique. I was allowed to embrace my vulnerability, to lean into it, and to lean into God. I was able to see the commonalities between myself and the children I go to serve. I believe I was able to more deeply experience their stories and to feel their pain. But it doesn't end there, because the research also shows that vulnerability is the root of joy, love, faith, belonging, creativity, and authenticity. How else is it that a boy named Joshua, a refugee from the Congo, can find belonging and love at the Amahoro home and smile so brightly that it will light up any room? That a man who nearly lost his business spent all his savings on a ticket to China, where he designed, developed, and commissioned a new idea that not only saved his business, but has taken it to new heights. That a group of nurses and midwives can break down social structure and engage in wholehearted learning. to the point that they could share in each other's failures and celebrate each other's success. That a group of teenage boys, formerly street children, can let go of the tough guy image to embrace and delight in a stuffed animal sent from across the globe. And that a mother who lost her son can say that when life is at its darkest is when God's light shines the brightest. Will you please pray with me? Lord, as we walk together, each of us on our own spiritual journey, please allow us to take in those vulnerable moments, so that your light can shine brightly within each of us, and we can truly experience the abundant joy that you have planned for us.